Hello my dear student, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Anchal Srivastava from Department of Physics, Institute of Science, Banaras Hind University. Today we are going to discuss about the module Magnetic Quantum Well and Magnetic Quantum Dot under the paper Nanoscience and Technology 2. After completing this module, the student will able to learn about the basic differences in magnetic quantum well, quantum wire and quantum dot. They will also learn about integrated property magnetic quantum dot with fluorescent nanomaterials. They will also learn the size and dimension effect of magnetic nanoparticle as quantum dot and quantum wells. They will also learn about an overview how GMR are spin dependence and its quantum well state. As we know that if dimensions of a material is continuously reduced from a large or microscopic size from centimeter to nano dimension, the properties remains the same at first. Then small changes begin to occur until finally when the size drops below 100 nanometer, dramatic changes in property can occur. If the magnetic nanoparticles one dimension is reduced to the nano range while the other two dimensions remains large, then we obtain a structure known as quantum well. Magnetic properties of material can be tailored in nanostructures such as thin film, wires and dots, and the electronic state that are relevant for magnetic phenomena such as acceleratory coupling, giant magnetoresistance and spin polarized tunneling. These states are probed by high resolution photo emission and inverse photo emission. The state of the art in surface preparation and analysis has made it possible to produce new type of material that are structured on the nanometer scale. A good example of an engineered solid, the magnetoresistive reading head for data stored on a magnetic hard disk. The design of these heads have evolved rapidly, which has led to an increase in the data density of hard disk faster than Moore's law. Giant magnetoresistance, which is GMR, reading head consists of sandwiches of cobalt, copper and permal alloy nickel iron that change their electrical resistance when exposed to the magnetic field of a stored bit. The discovery of this effect was recognized by 2007 Nobel Prize in Physics. The sandwich structure are known as spin walls since they preferentially transmit electrons of one spin orientation. A related phenomena is oscillatory magnetic coupling, an oscillation in the magnetic orientation of two layers with film thickness. To find out which electrons are producing these effects, one can investigate their energy levels by inverse photo emission. Thereby, low energy electrons impinge onto the surface and drop into unoccupied energy levels, emitting ultraviolet photons. This study discovered quantized electronic state in magnetic multilayers that are connected to their spatial properties. If a magnetic nanoparticles, two-dimensional, are so reduced and one remains large, the resulting structure is referred as a quantum wire. The extreme case of this process of size reduction, in which all three dimensions of magnetic nanoparticles reach the low nanometer range, is called a quantum dot. The word quantum is associated with these three types of nanostructures because the charges in properties arises from the quantum mechanical nature of physics in the domain of the ultra small. Multimodal contrast agent based on highly luminescent quantum dot combines with magnetic nanoparticles or ions form an exciting class of new material for biological imaging, which two functionality integrated in a single nanoparticle, a sensitive contrast agent for two very powerful and highly complementary imaging technique, fluorescence imaging and magnetic resonance imaging MRI is obtained. The magnetic quantum well and magnetic quantum dot. Let us discuss the magnetic quantum well first. If a magnetic nanoparticle one dimension is reduced to a nano range while the other two dimension remains large, then we obtained a structure known as quantum well. Magnetic properties of materials can be tailored in nanostructure, such as thin film, wire, and dots, and the electronic state that are relevant for magnetic phenomena such as oscillatory coupling, giant magnetoresistance, and spin polarized tunneling. These states are probed by high resolution photoemission and inverse photoemission. Let us discuss quantum wire. If the magnetic nanoparticle two-dimensional are so reduced and one remains large, the resulting structure is referred as quantum wire. And now let us discuss magnetic quantum dot. The extreme case of this process of size reduction in which all three dimensions for magnetic nanoparticles reaches the low nanometer range is called quantum dot. The word quantum is associated with these three types of nanostructure because the changes in properties arises from the quantum mechanical nature of physics in the domain of ultra small. Multimodal contrast agent based on high luminescence quantum dot combined with magnetic nanoparticle or ion from an exciting class of new material for bioimaging. With two functionality integrated in a single nanoparticle, a sensitive contrast agent for two very powerful and highly complementary imaging technique, fluorescence imaging and magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, is obtained. Let us talk about integration of fluorescence and magnetic properties of magnetic quantum dots. This is done by describing the development for four different approaches to integrate the fluorescence and magnetic properties in a single nanoparticle. The first type of particle is created by the growth of heterostructure in which a quantum dot is either overgrown with a layer of magnetic material or linked to a superpara or ferromagnetic nanoparticle. The second approach involves doping of paramagnetic ions into quantum dots. The third one is to use silica or polymer nanoparticle as a matrix for incorporation of both quantum dot and magnetic nanoparticles. And finally, it is possible in fourth one to introduce chelating molecules with paramagnetic ions into the coordination cell of quantum dot. All different approaches have resulted in recent breakthroughs and the demonstration of capability of bioimaging using both functionalities. In the two structures shown in the slide, carriers confined to quantum dot interact with a local magnetic environment provided by paramagnetic Mn+2 ions, spin 5 by 2. In the left, a layer of MnSe is grown sufficiently close to CDSe quantum dots so that there is a significant overlap of the carrier wave function with that of the Mn ion. The right structure is variant of the stress-induced quantum well dot samples in which the dot-like regime produced by a strain and present in a digital magnetic heterostructure DMH, a quantum well with incorporated Mn ions. The single peak at zero field is replaced with two peaks of opposite circular polarization. The enhanced Zeeman splitting of magnetic SiQWD samples is attributed to enhanced local effect resulting from contribution of nearby Mn ion. Let us discuss the size and dimensionality effect. We are accustomed to studying electronic systems that exist in three dimensions and are large or microscopic in size. In this case, the conduction electrons are delocalized and move freely throughout the entire conducting medium, such as copper wire. It is clear that all the wire dimensions are very large compared to the distance between atoms. The situation changes when one or more dimensions of the copper wire become so small that approaches several times of the spacing between the atoms in the lattice. When this occurs, the delocalization is impeded and the electron experience confinement. For example, consider a flat plate of copper that is 10 cm long, 10 cm wide and 3.6 nanometer thick. This thickness corresponds to the length of only 10 unit cell, which means that 20% of the atoms are in the unit cell at the surface of the copper. The conduction electron would be delocalized in the plane of the plate, but confined in the narrow dimension, a configuration referred as quantum well. In Table 1, it has been discussed the quantum structure, their size, electron content, size and electron content for bulk material and quantum well, quantum dot, etc. So, if the quantum well of the size of 10 nanometer thick, then it is 1 to 10 power 4 micrometer square electron content. And similarly, if you go by 100 nanometer to 100 nanometer, this electron content is 1 to 10 power 4 micrometer inverse. So these are the conduction electron content for smaller size and large size quantum structure containing donor concentration of 10 to the power 14 to 10 to the power 18 cubic centimeter cube. Similarly, in Table 2, delocalization and confinement dimension of quantum nanostructure has been shown. For bulk counterpart, the delocalization is on all three directions and there is no confinement. In case of quantum well, the delocalization dimension is 2 and confinement dimension is 1. Quantum wire has delocalization dimension 1 and confinement dimensions are 2. And quantum dot, there is no delocalization dimension, but all three dimensions are confined. The electrons are delocalized and move freely along the wire, but are confined in transverse direction in this case. So, let us discuss the quantum confinement in this case. Nanotechnology, an emerging technology which has gained fame in every field of life, from an excellent sunscreen to an electronic chip. This emerging technology has been excellent properties to even those elements which at one time were thought to be being useless. For example, carbon is a non-metal, but when considered as a nanoscale, carbon nanotubes are the best conductors. But what is the paradox beyond size? If the size can make a non-conductor an insulator, what is the basic physics beyond that? Well, the answer is simple, and it is quantum confinement. The quantum confinement effect is observed when the size of the particle is too small to be comparable to the wavelength of electron. To understand this effect, we break the word like quantum and confinement, and word confinement means to confine the motion of randomly moving electron to restrict its motion in a specific energy levels, discreteness, and quantum reflects the atomic realm of the particle. So, as the size of the particle decreases till we reach a nanoscale, the decrease in the confinement dimension makes the energy level discrete, and this increase or widen up the band gap, and ultimately the band gap energy also increase. Since the band gap and wavelength are inversely related to each other, the wavelength decreases with decrease in size, and proof is the emission of blue radiation. Let us discuss the basics of potential well, their energy and wave function. The electronic and optical properties of material are affected by size and shape. Well-established technical achievements, including quantum dot, were derived from size manipulation and investigation for their theoretical corroboration on quantum confinement effect. The major part of the theory is the behavior of exciton resemble that an atom as its surrounding space shortened. Rather good approximation of the excitation behavior is the 3D model of a connection between energy state and dimension of space. Decreasing the volume or the dimension of available space increases the energy of the state. Shown in the diagram is the change in the electron energy level and band gap between nanomaterials and its bulk state. The following equation shows the relationship between energy level and dimension spacing. Psi nx ny nz is equal to under root 8 lx ly lz sine nx pi x by lx, sine ny pi y by lx, and sine nz pi z by lz. And energy E nx ny nz is equal to h cut square pi square by 2m in bracket nx y lx square plus ny by ly square plus nz by lz square. Research results provides an alternative explanation of the shift of the property at nanoscale. In the bulk phase, the surface appears to control some of the microscopic observed property. However, in nanoscale, surface molecules do not obey the expected configuration in space. As a result, surface tension changes tremendously. Let us discuss quantum well states and magnetic coupling. The magnetic coupling between layers plays a key role in giant magnetoresistance known as GMR. The Nobel Prize winning technology used for reading head of hard disk. This coupling oscillates in synchronous with density of state at Fermi level, clearly shown in figure. It turns out that the density of state maxima are correlated with oscillations of magnetic coupling in multi-layers. The magnetoresistance oscillates with the same period. This provides the clue for understanding this magnetic phenomena as the effect of quantized electron level in nanostructures. By manipulating the interfaces in magnetic multilayers, one can enhance the spin dependence reflectivity and optimize the sensitivity of a magnetic reading head. Giant magnetoresistance and spin dependence scattering. Giant magnetoresistance (GMR) is a quantum mechanical magnetoresistance effect observed in multilayers composed of alternating ferromagnetic and non-magnetic conducting layers. The 2007 Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to Albert Fert and Peter Kuenberg for the discovery of giant magnetoresistance. The effect is observed as a significant change in the electrical resistance depending on whether the magnetization of adjacent ferromagnetic layers are in parallel or an anti-parallel alignment. The overall resistance is relatively low for parallel alignment and relatively high for anti-parallel alignment. The magnetization direction can be controlled, for example, by applying an external magnetic field. The effect is based on the dependence of electron scattering on the spin orientation. The main application of GMR is magnetic field sensor, which are used to read data in hard disk drive, biosensors, micro electromechanical system MEMS, and other devices. GMR multilayer structure are also used in magnetoresistive random access memory, which is MRAM, as cells that store one bit of information. In literature, the term giant magnetoresistance is sometimes confused with colloidal magnetoresistance of ferromagnetic and antiferromagnetic semiconductor, which is not related to the multilayer structure. In magnetically ordered material, the electrical resistance is crucially affected by scattering of electrons on the magnetic sublattice of the crystal, which is formed by crystallographically equivalent atoms with non-zero magnetic moments. Scattering depends on relative orientation of electron spins and those magnetic moments. It is weakest when they are parallel and strongest when they are anti-parallel. It is relatively strong in the paramagnetic state, in which the magnetic moment of the atom has random orientation. Electric current can be passed through magnetic superlattice in two ways. In the current in plane CIP geometry, the current flow along the layers and the electrodes are located on one side of the structure. In the current perpendicular to the plane CPP configuration, the current is passed perpendicular to the layer and the electrodes are located on different sides of superlattice. The CPP geometry results is more than twice higher GMR, but it is more difficult to realize the practice than CIP configuration. Magnetic ordering differs in superlattices with ferromagnetic and antiferromagnetic interaction between the layers. In the former case, the magnetization directions are the same in different ferromagnetic layers in the absence of applied magnetic field, whereas in the latter case, opposite directions alternate in the multilayer. Electrons traveling through the ferromagnetic superlattice interact with it much weaker when their spin directions are opposite to the magnetization of the lattice than when they are parallel to it. Such anisotropy is not observed for ferromagnetic superlattice. As a result, it scatters electrons stronger than ferromagnetic superlattice and exhibit a higher electrical resistance. So students, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. The first one, if a magnetic nanoparticle's one dimension is reduced to the nano range while the other two dimensions remains large, then we obtained a structure known as quantum well. If a magnetic nanoparticle two dimensions are so reduced and one remains large, the resulting structure referred to as quantum wire. The extreme cases of these process of size reduction in which all three dimensions for magnetic nanoparticles reach the lower nanometer range is called quantum dot. So we will get magnetic quantum dot, magnetic quantum wire and magnetic quantum well. This is done by describing the development for four different approaches to integrate the fluorescence and magnetic property in a single nanoparticle. The first type of particles is created by growing the heterostructure in which a quantum dot is either overgrown with a layer of magnetic material or linked with super para or magnetic nanoparticles. The second approach involves doping of paramagnetic ions into quantum dots. Third one, to use silica or polymer nanoparticles as a matrix for the incorporation of both quantum dots and magnetic nanoparticles. And the final, it is possible to introduce chelating molecules with paramagnetic ions into a coordination cell of quantum dots. All different approaches have resulted in recent breakthrough and the demonstration of capability of bioimaging using both functionality of bioimaging magnetic materials as well as fluorescent imaging. In this semiconductor, heterostructure lattice mismatch is strained between the CDSC quantum dots and the ZN CDSC quantum dots produced a three-dimensional confinement potential in quantum well itself, effectively confining carriers a small region in the sample, termed strain-induced quantum well dot or SIQWDS. The conduction electron would be delocalized in the plane of the plate but confined in the narrow dimension, a configuration referred as quantum well. We have been discussing the quantum well in isolation. To make them useful, they need coupling to their surroundings, to each other, or to electrodes that can add unsubtract electron to them. This can easily be done in SET, quantum dot coupled to an external circuit through source and drain leads. So this is all about this module. Thank you very much.